What does it take to prepare tomorrow's litigators? On this segment of Legal Connections, Professor Denise Cespedes reflects on her own transition from the courtroom to the classroom and reveals the essential skills every law student should master before graduation. Welcome, Professor.
Thank you for having me.
So civil litigation is your background. Tell us about that and what made you choose that initially.
I think I was initially drawn to civil litigation because of its intellectual challenge. I think it's a very challenging arena, but it exposes you to so many different scenarios, different cases. And so to me, that was very attractive. I learned adaptability very early on in my career. And I think now as a law professor, I'm able to leverage that mindset into being a law professor, really bringing that practical insight into the classroom, but reflecting on it and recognizing that it is very challenging. It requires a certain set of skills, and being really honest with my students about what that requires.
That's interesting. And so as making that transition to the classroom, so the adaptability, of course, the element of surprise, you're not really sure who your students will be, so you're ready for that. I guess the power of the pivot is the big thing, right?
Yes.
And what would you say, based on your experience in law school, was maybe stood out the most in your litigation experience?
So I think for me personally, I was really drawn to professors that were able to blend doctrine with practical insight. I felt really inspired by those professors to see that there was a really direct segue between what I was learning in law school and what I would have to do in practice. I actually really enjoyed writing intensive courses like LRW because that feedback really emboldened me to challenge myself to be a better writer because I knew how critical that would be in practice. But I think for me personally, going into practice, there's only so much you could expose yourself to in law school. You know, you go into that thinking, I've got this, I've got the skills, but now it's kind of like a do or die mentality, you know, sink or swim. And for me, it very much was that. My first experience as a litigator, I was their very first associate in their very first Florida office. And so a lot of things I was doing, I was almost paving the way for the associates that came after me, but I was just out of law school and I was trying to apply all of the things I learned. So I think reflecting back and taking a moment to pause and think, some really critical skills I already have, I'm bringing this into the practice with me, and that would be how to effectively organize my legal writing, how to be an effective oral advocate, things that seem really non-consequential when you're learning them, but that you need to apply pretty quickly going into civil litigation. And I think I was able to appreciate it. I had a very profound appreciation for the professors that really emphasized those skills for me. And I could almost remember their words in my head in my first year of practice. So I think there was a very direct communication in that, direct line of thought in that way, and how helpful it was to me.
That's incredible.
Yeah.
I'm trying to imagine you, the trainee or the new associate, basically creating the manual for ones after you. So you had no training wheels and you were the one documenting the training materials.
It was tough. And I think I tried to look at myself as someone who, while I was capable, I had to give myself grace, right? It was a learning experience for me. But at the same time, I learned so much going through that process that way, kind of getting thrown into the fire. And I recognize that not all of my students will have the same experience, but they could relate to the fact that you've been exposed to these skills. These skills have played a role in your law school journey, whether it be through LRW or a doctrinal class that emphasized how important it was not just to learn law from a theoretical perspective, but from a practical perspective and what it takes to actually litigate. And I think that's important.
Now, I've been out for a while, and you've said, is it LRW? Because you've got to educate me.
Yes. Legal research and writing.
See, we didn't call it that.
What did you call it?
We just said it in full. So thank you to all of us who forgot or may not have known. Okay, so those are the skills, just to recap, the skills that you would say that law students must have upon graduating. are?
I would say effective communication skills, both in written and oral form, because obviously you can have a great argument, but if you can't communicate it clearly, then it's a failed argument. I think the ability to really appreciate legal precision is something that I emphasize with my students. That comes from a confidence in your preparation and researching the law, but also making it a goal that when you're conveying a legal concept to the court or to the client, that you're doing it accurately with precision. And I think probably professional judgment. People don't view that as a skill, but I view it as the bridge between what you're learning in the law and how to apply it in the law. In other words, ethics comes into that, using your professional judgment to say, strategically, this is what we can do, this is what we should do. Professional judgment, I think, comes with time, but it's a skill nonetheless that needs to be developed as an attorney.
Absolutely. How do you see your role evolving as a professor?
So I think for me personally, I'd like to continue to bring my practical experience into the classroom, but also to recognize that this group of students is going into almost a new legal landscape where a lot of the skill sets necessary to be a successful attorney are now being emphasized earlier in their law school journey. We think about the changes to the bar exam, and now we have the next gen bar exam, and how it's really skills focused. And I think I view my evolution as a law professor to be one that embraces that and that acknowledges we have a new generation of attorneys where they need to understand practical application in tandem with their doctrinal understanding. And I do that through reflecting on my own experiences, leveraging my own experiences in the classroom, connecting that to something very familiar to them, whether it be through popular media or an example of what's going on in the news, current news, or my own experiences specifically. Maybe integrating more experiential learning into the classroom, formative assessments, things that I think will really heighten their awareness of how this doctrine works in practice. I think as a new attorney, that would be the most valuable, I think, experience from a law school perspective. There's so much growing you have to do as a law school student. And so I really view my role also as that of a mentor, not just in terms of their learning, but personally, how are they adapting to the process? How are they supporting their own success? And how can I be a part of that? And then from a broader community perspective, just continuing to ensure that those students that exit our law program that go successfully into practice really bring the values and the competency that we're aiming for at Florida A&M. I think we want them to be diligent attorneys, ethical attorneys, competent attorneys, confident attorneys, and so continuing, to support them in that process.
Well, they're very fortunate to have you, and it's been such a pleasure to have you here to share some of those highlights, because of course we've been in school and the practical application is scary, and it's good for you making it relevant for the students while they're still in school.
Absolutely.
Thank you again.
Thank you for having me.
Professor Cespedes' insights and dedication to preparing students as advocates is truly invaluable.